Hello, good evening, and welcome back. My blocking my camera. It is suddenly summer level warm here in this country, so yeah, it takes a little bit of getting used to. Alright, here's the thing. I'm in a weird mode. My son went to school camp and is away for a couple of days, and my introvert bubble just closed around me and shut everything out, and then my agenda was like, my calendar has alarms for everything, and it was like, you need to do a live stream. I was like, oh, okay. So we're doing a live stream. We're doing a live stream on Ultramarine Blue, and it's gonna be weird and chaotic, and I have no clue what I'm gonna do, but that's what we're here for. So welcome, Ariana, and Beth. Welcome. I'm glad to see that you're doing well. Doing well, no, but feeling well enough to check in. Is the sound loud enough, by the way? If it needs to be louder, just let me know. All right. Here's what we're gonna do. I have Ultramarine Blue, and I don't want to do a portrait in Ultramarine Blue. That is the ugliest thing that I can think of. So I was thinking maybe I could glaze something. I have some panels here that are in need of a glaze, but I was like, are we gonna glaze for an hour? That's kind of boring. So I took a self-portrait of Vincent van Gogh, because Ariana and I were talking about it, I think last week we were talking about it because I went to Kiefer Expo in Amsterdam, which is in the Van Gogh Museum. And there's just a lot of Van Gogh lately, and I found a book in the thrift store with all his letters. So I thought, let's just go. Let's just do it. I just realized that I don't have my own reference photo, so I'm just gonna totally organize here. I have to download my own reference photo, which by the way is in the description of the video. There we go. I'm not gonna do an actual like copy or anything. I just need something to paint off, and I don't want to do my own face again. What I want to do is this, and I just thought of it in the last 15 minutes, so here's here. I have this paper, and I figured the complementary color of Ultramarine Blue is kind of like orange. Yellow works as well. Yellow is like technically also in the primary triangle. But Ultramarine Blue is opposite of orange, right? So I thought we could do a gold background. Now I have a feeling that maybe it's a little bit light. Very light. Oh. Yeah, that's better. So I had some gold metallic paint, and I covered this piece of paper with it, And you're wondering, have you lost your mind? Because that is not ultramarine blue. It is not. It is burnt sienna. But what I want to show you is what happens when you glaze ultramarine blue over burnt sienna. Because one of my favorite shadow colors in oil is burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. But you can do that in two ways, right? You can mix it, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and apply that as a shadow color. Or you can, and this is technically how you're supposed to do it, you can glaze over a glaze, right? So you do burnt sienna and then you wait for that to dry. And then you glaze on top of that. Now, I don't have time for that because we have like an hour. So I figured I would use acrylic. Now, every purist, every oil paint purist who is not watching right now, because you're all cool, but hypothetically, if they were watching, they would have a heart attack because that's not how it works, right? The whole oil binder, refraction, blah de blah. But again, I don't have time. We don't have time. I do have a panel that I've been working on, because as much as I try to add a lot into an hour in a live stream, usually I work pretty slow. So I do have a panel over here that needs glazing. So I'm just going to quickly kind of block in these darker areas, and then I'm going to put it aside and let it dry. Looking a bit crooked. Vincent. Alright, we're going to put this over here. And I'm going to show you a little bit of glazing on a panel, like I said, that I've been working on. Just to kind of show you how normally this color would be a part of my palette. Now you can glaze with this, no problem. They're both semi-transparent pigments, but I'm going to add a little bit of oleo gel. I'm never going to learn. Just in case I need it. Alright, take a little break. That was a flying start. Check out the chat. We support you on all your thank you very much. That's much appreciated. Kelly is here. Hi. Alright, you're all... Olvinica is here. Hello. Welcome. Linda. Hi. Yeah, alright. All my favorite ladies are here. Right. here we go. I have this little panel. Now, normally what I do is I underpaint pretty much everything with some kind of umber, raw umber, yeah, different kinds of raw umber. In the live stream about umbers, we talked about the different hues of different umbers. Like, the differences are small, but when you have that limited range of colors, one of those umbers might very much stand out. This was an underpainting done partially with raw umber and partially with Van Dyke Brown. Now, Van Dyke Brown is, let's see if I can, is a mix actually of black, let's see, of burnt sienna and black, and I think this is yellow umber. No, ochre. Yellow ochre. Anyways, it's a black basically that has been warmed up a little bit with some burnt sienna. And that's what I used, and white, of course. Now, what I want is, I want everything here, every shadow, to be darker than it is. And I can show you what happens when you use straight ultramarine blue. On this. So I kind of hope that YouTube is not downgrading my video too much. But what you can see, and especially the surrounding area still being quite warm, is that it cools everything down, which is basically, like I said on Instagram, the only thing that I use ultramarine blue for is to tone down my browns. Alright, so now we have ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. We're just gonna dump that right in. This is a round panel, which is the most interesting shape that I've used in a while. I work on aluminium composite panels, and I learned that you can have them cut in different shapes, right? So I had them cut round, which is, I mean, I like it. So let's talk about ultramarine. I started reading and I was like, that's a lot of information. That's interesting. So you have the natural kind, right? The kind that is extracted from, I think it's semi-precious stone, but I'm not a stone expert. My mom is a stone expert. this is extracted from lapis lazuli, which is a great stone if you like blue. It's a great stone. And the whole process of getting a little bit of blue that is actually vibrant enough so that you can use it is so tedious, and it takes so long that the pigment, the natural pigment of ultramarine blue was, I think at some point it says 10 times more expensive than the stone itself. And at some point it was, I think, just as or maybe even more valuable than gold. Now, one of the largest, I think largest, deposits of lapis lazuli is in the area that we now know as Afghanistan. And so the Italians had a decent trajectory going there with their boats, right? Especially the port of Venice. So they got all the good lapis. And that's why you see a lot of blue being used during that time. Now, at the same time, in Germany and the Netherlands, there was significantly less blue going on. Partially because them Italians used it all, but also because it was just terribly expensive to use. That being said, it was a color used during the Renaissance, but as the internet taught me, the use of lapis lazuli as a pigment, I think the earliest cases were found in Buddhist caves in that area that we now call Afghanistan. In the 5th and 6th century, and I think later on 10th century in China. So that's pretty far ahead of our Renaissance era. Getting some actual work done here for change. So I think eventually there was even a shortage of the stuff. And I think it was the end of the 18th century when there were a couple of cases where someone saw a color that appeared to be or to look like ultramarine blue during some chemical processes. So I think that's when they started realizing that it may be possible to synthesize this. And if I remember correctly, some French organization sort of organized a stimulation prize to sort of get people going, get people experimenting with stuff. And that, I think, led to two guys inventing ultramarine blue as a synthetic pigment. Now, one of those guys decided to keep his method secret. I don't know what the reason for that was, but the other guy played nice and gave us the recipe. And this is basically why we can afford to use ultramarine blue these days. So I think it was early 19th century when it was established as a synthetic pigment that is stable, and matches the composition of ultramarine blue. And the thing with ultramarine blue, natural ultramarine blue, is, I think it's, I don't know if I read that correctly, but it's probably one of the most complex minerals that we use as a pigment. Has a very long molecule notation. And from that moment on, we had synthetic ultramarine blue. And as much as I don't necessarily like the color itself, it's very boring, I am very grateful. I mean, can you imagine us sitting here during a live stream and like wasting $300 of precious pigments on a random sketch of Vincent? Right. Now, I got some work done. So what you can see overall when you glaze with ultramarine blue is it gets darker. That is glazing. Glazing is an additive way of painting, like watercolor, right? Every layer you add, no matter if it's a light color, if it's yellow or whatever, you add something, it adds in value as well. So you darken certain areas. And while darkening certain areas, you can choose to shift them to a certain direction on the color wheel. Now, I thought that this was too warm, right? I want to bring the figure, which is a weird, like we're looking on top of the figure, on the top of the figure. I want it to come forward, so I want it to be lighter, one, and I want it to be warmer, two. So it's important for me that the background, therefore, is a little bit colder than my other colors. I say colors because it's all very gray right now. And I'm doing that by layering ultramarine blue on top of it. I'm probably going to add more glazes as I work on this more, but I just wanted to give you one pass and show you how that works. Got a little bit of glare at it. That is oil paint. All right. Carefully put that here. Are you dry? Yes. Got a lot of acrylics. All right. Am I going to use white? Alright, I'm going to try not to. Let's add a bit more. Let's make it weird for today, okay? I'll relax a little bit. How are you all doing? You drop that in the chat. And I will have a look at it. Ariana says, Interesting use. I don't find it boring. Yeah, I know. It's funny because my mom is absolutely obsessed with the color of lapis lazuli, and it just doesn't vibe with me at all. I always in my mind, where's my phone? I always see it as sort of an add-on color, you know, a color that I use, like I said, to tone stuff down and to glaze or whatever. But maybe this will be fun to do. Swim in it, yes. I know Vincent loved Ultramarine Blue. He has a beautiful painting with cypresses, the trees, where the bottom is yellow and the whole sky is just shades of ultramarine. So like I said in when I was glazing, ultramarine is a very stable pigment. It already was, as a natural pigment. But the synthetic variant is also stable. Now, what you can see when you layer this over burnt sienna, as opposed to here layering it over what is right now metallic gold, is that you get a darker sort of, I wouldn't say purple, but it's also not super blue. Like the burnt sienna sort of takes a little bit of the intensity out of the blue, making it a very, very suitable shadow color. Alright, let's see what happens if we just straight up glaze this over the gold. Fun times. Linda says I love taller blue green shade better. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think you know, in terms of intensity, ultramarine blue will absolutely lose any contest with Phthalo blue. And on one hand, you know, it makes it an easier pigment to deal with, but there is definitely a limit to its to its intensity. You love all the color, yeah, you do. I love people who love colors. I don't know why, but somehow, in some secret part of me, believes that people who like colors are just generally nicer, nicer people. All right, this is hysterical. Take that out a little bit. So I read something fun on my Wikipedia deep dive. The color ultramarine blue, its natural form. So during the Renaissance, it was used as a glaze, right? Because you need to use that pigment sparingly because it's gonna ruin you financially. So they would reserve that color for specific things. Specific things, usually being the robe of Mary or the robe of the baby Jesus. And I think in the Western world, or in Christianity maybe in general, we therefore, or not we, because I'm not Christian, but they associate the color blue with that level of holiness. And maybe that's why I don't like it. Could be. Anyways, I was getting all, ooh, yeah, okay, handmade and stale and everything. And then I read something about the Egyptians. Now, the Egyptians also admired blue. And we're not really sure why, but I can imagine that maybe the sort of reverence that we have for the color blue also comes from the fact that it's not readily available in nature. There are no blue trees, there's no blue grass, there's no blue sand, rock. Like everything in the world is some shade of brown, pretty much. So the actual blue, the only thing that we actually see as being blue is either water or the sky on certain days and certain moments. So I can imagine that when you're digging and suddenly this blue rock is staring back at you, that might be a very impressive thing to see. And so it's also pretty rare. Unlike the dirt that we make umbers and siennas and ochres and whatever with, this is a pretty rare source material to begin with. And so the ancient Egyptians were very impressed with blue stones. So I think that if you try to grind that up into a pigment with which you're then gonna paint things that are supposed to resemble the stone you just ground up, you would probably be sentenced to death or something. So what they did, and it's really quite amazing that they did it, is they made a blue, some copper-based blue, not really sure what it was exactly, and they call it Egyptian blue. Now if you've ever been to a museum with stolen Egyptian stuff, you will have seen that Egyptian blue. They would glaze ornaments with it, sculptures with it, and it has a very specific color. So they would use that to paint things to mimic the feeling, the appearance of ultramarine blue. Oop. Come back. Let's see. Ariana, Homeric Greeks did not have a word for blue because sea and sky are just what they are. Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool. You always have such great information to share. Luna says, I can only imagine it would be like witnessing. Yes, yeah, it would. Right? You would find, oh my, yeah. Especially when you think about Afghanistan. That area, it's very warm, right? There are a lot of warm colors. That's great, like here. Looking very dramatic, Vincent. I think you would approve. Alright, so I was going to tell you about why in the name of lapis lazuli I started painting papers gold. I have this weird obsession, like most artists, with whenever I read something about someone doing something, I kind of want to do it also. So there are a lot of painters who work on copper plates. I'm pretty sure one day I'm gonna paint on a copper plate, but just the idea of having a copper plate, which I like copper, I'm one of those people who like copper, it would stress me out, right? Like, what would I paint on it? So that stressed me out. I mean, it's not cheap. So I figured I have a paint, an acrylic paint called copper. I know it's not copper, but it's called copper. So I was like, maybe I should paint some oil paint paper with that color, and I did. I think I have it. I'll show you in a bit. I don't make too much noise. And I painted on it with oil paint. It was actually kind of nice, right? It's funny because the background color, of course, that you paint on kind of influences the way that you see your own colors, the colors that you apply. But the metallic look also, I don't know, it did something. Or at least that's what I choose to believe. So I had fun with that, and then I put it away, and I pretty much forgot all about it, which is a thing that I do. And I was stressing about what to do with this live stream, so I figured gold. I have 2 layers of gold and 1 layer of copper. And again, that is all cheap acrylic paint. Right, Kelly, doing good. Last week, my town put out a pop call for nature-themed art. Oh, that's cool. A flowering branch, that is really cool. If you go to settings on your iPhone, display, brightness, stop. Oh, you're talking about my phone. Yeah, display, right? Yeah, I should I should probably, except it's not an iPhone. And maybe I can. Oh, please don't start drilling. Oh Lord, I'm not gonna do anything on my phone right now. I'll just unlock it every 5 minutes. I have a guy here who, in the apartment building, who feels like drilling some stuff in the evening. I say guy, could be a girl, but I just want it to be a guy so I can get really, really angry. We're in the middle of construction on our apartment building where they're working on the concrete. Like, this whole building is made of concrete, and that needs to be maintained. And that means that there is drilling in concrete, which is like the most deafening form of drilling all day. And now this dude is like, yeah, it's evening, let's drill some more. So I hope he's gonna leave it alone until it's 9 o'clock. Alright, so Vincent is looking very, I want to say blue, but that is just too much. It's too much. Poor guy. What else can we do? A little bit there, maybe. Let's make him a little blue. I always put way too much paint out. During live streams. Maybe we can do the background a little bit. So I was talking to a friend recently, and also talking about that irritating thing that I have, and some of us have, where you don't really want to do something that may not, how do I say this? Do something out of your comfort zone with the risk of it looking like maybe you don't know what the hell you're doing. And I've been thinking about that again a lot, because the funny thing is every time I stop thinking about it, it creeps back in, and I start doing all these things with colors that are safe and references that I've already painted a million times, and then I get angry for some reason, or tired, because I'm not the kind of person who likes doing the same stuff. That's just not good for me. But on the other hand, there is the, oh my god, what if I fail? And people are gonna think that I don't know how to paint, right? "15 minutes. Alright, let's do some white." For the fun of it. Let's try not to drop it on my phone. I feel like I gotta work a little bit more with this color, but I was just thinking like mixing in this white is what, when I was young, they would associate with kind of baby boy blue. Oh damn. That's right. Look at this. I didn't think it looked that blue. Oh, my palette, look, it doesn't look that blue compared to the white, right? It's not that blue. And that's what I mean with the background color. Yep, it's nuts. I'm thinking I actually made a mistake in saying, oh, I'm not gonna do a portrait. That would be crazy. Kind of thinking now it would have been cool. Let's see if we can do a mid-tone. I have that in his. Yeah, this is turning out to be more fun than I thought. So that's kind of what I mean, right? What I said earlier. Like, there's a part of me that is just really afraid that that's gonna be a big mess, right? And I made a bit of a mess before here on live streams, and as much as I kind of got over that, right? It wasn't like, oh yeah, now I'm gonna quit live streaming because I'm so upset, but it's also not a feeling that I want to have again. Go away, please. It's not a great feeling. It's just not. I think most of us are pretty sensitive to stuff like that. Oh, just one rant. Like, I don't get people who say things in like 3, 4, 5 different messages. Can you not put that in one message? Alright, so one thing I want to show you, and then we're going to call it quits, is one of my favorite palettes for doing color studies, basically color studies or whatever, is a duo-toned palette. So what you basically do is you pick a cold color of blue or black, and a warm color can also be anything you want, and the only thing you focus on then is value and color temperature. So everything that is a colder color, bluish, especially in the face, like the greener areas, grayer areas, you do more colder color, and the warmer areas you do more of the warmer color. And one of the wonderful colors for that is ultramarine blue. You can mix it with burnt sienna. You can also mix it with burnt umber. Ultramarine blue and burnt umber is really a good combo. So what happens, that's a bit much, is they start canceling each other out a little bit, the chroma. They start canceling the chroma out a little bit. So in the middle of the two mixing, you get kind of a gray. And if you see that gray as your middle ground, if you will, everything towards the blue, everything that has more blue, is colder, and everything that has more warm color is warmer, right? So now we have kind of a gray, and I will show you how gray it is. So that's no longer a very vibrant midtone. And you can play around with that. Again, usually ultramarine blue and burnt umber. Works in acrylic, works in oil. It's a very well-known limited palette. All right. I said all right, but wait. Wait. That's such a sweet face. All right, I'm gonna work on this for a very long time. It's 9 o'clock. That's perfect. Just gonna catch up on the chat. Experimentation is cool. Yes, thank you. Experimentation means success and less successful. Yes. Thank you. It's true, and you know, whenever I record lessons, well, you know how it is. I don't think I'm just preaching. Like what I'm saying usually is the things that I struggle with, and that I know, you know, when I post about it on social media, I know that other people struggle with it. Like your struggles are rarely unique, especially in the art department. But what I found really weird to experience is going through that feeling of being unsuccessful, and whatever that may be. You know, maybe you think something is successful and I don't. But regardless, you know, when we're talking about me, then I'm the one dealing with that emotion, and maybe you feel you're unsuccessful and I think something is great, but that still means that individually we have to sort of go through that feeling of being uncomfortable. And this is the first time, I think, with these live streams where I actually have to sit down afterwards and just feel uncomfortable and just ride it out, right? Whereas maybe a couple of years ago I would eat, sometimes I still do, but voila. I would eat, I would smoke, I would drink. These are all ways to sort of avoid having to go through being uncomfortable. And I really appreciate the people like you who basically sit with me being uncomfortable and say stuff and speak your mind and just address this this topic because I think it's helpful, not just in an art way, but it's helpful in life to have the skill that is required to deal with being vulnerable and deal with being uncomfortable. So that was my TED Talk. Thank you for joining. I'm gonna chill out. I don't know if you saw it on Instagram, I have a 2.3 meter high piece of paper hanging in my living room. Again, my kid is on school camp, so I'm partying here. I got that up somehow, and it's been up since last night when I put it up. It didn't fall down, nothing dramatic happened, so I'm very happy with that. And I'm working on a giant drawing, so I'm gonna get something to eat and then go back to my drawing. So, thank you again for joining me, and again, like I said, not just for the YouTube likes things, but literally for helping me through stuff. You're cheaper than therapy. So thank you. Beth, take care of yourself. Everyone else, take care of yourself too. I will see you on social media, and next week, I have no idea what we're gonna do next week, but there will be a live stream. So I will see you there, and thank you for joining me. Bye-bye.